I was going to say a joke, but then that felt really awkward. The Mazda RX8 is a very misrepresented, misunderstood car in the automotive community. In my opinion, the RX8 is one of the best bang for funsies cars you can buy right now, but everybody gets it wrong. They kind of have this impression that, like, when you go on a relationship adventure with somebody that's got a bunch of tattoos and childhood trauma, and they do weird things to you in bed that you really enjoy, that you would think the rest of their relationship with that person would be normal and vanilla and white. And then all of a sudden, I'm talking about white bread, and then all of a sudden you think to yourself, wait a minute, this person's kind of weird, and I don't know if I like this weird relationship. But you're the one that wanted it. That's the Mazda RX-8. The Mazda RX-8 does not pretend to be anything that it's not. It's just an RX-8. And with that being said, I'm so glad you're here for 20 minutes to talk about useless Mazda RX-8 information with me, your host, Alex.Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram, which, by the way, welcome to Martini Works. I hope you're making something good for dinner. And if you are, let me know what you're doing below. If you're on the potty, keep it PG. Otherwise, YouTube's going to make this video restricted. Now, with that being said, before we can jump into the Mazda RX-8 information, we have to know about this whole thing. Why the RX-8 is in this weird bubble of don't ever buy it and don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, or this is the best track car you can possibly buy for under $5,000. With that said, we have to start with the first question that you 100% never thought to ask, and that is, what was the first Rotary? The Rotary is the journey that's either going to teach you that you never want to own one ever again, or you're going to wake up one day at 35 years old owning 6 of them, and you're going to have to explain to people that no, it actually is a really fun hobby, and it definitely hasn't taken over your entire life. There is no in-between, though, to be clear. The first Mazda Rotary was the 1967 Mazda Cosmo. It was a halo car with the Wankel, but the first car with the Wankel mass-produced was a car called the NSU. It's not around anymore. The more you know. The Wankel actually has been a licensed engine design for a long time, which we're going to get into, which is why you see different vehicle manufacturers actually have an attempt at making a Wankel-powered car or a Rotary-powered car. They're typically used interchangeably. Now, with that being said, who made it? That's a great question. It was made by a man named Felix Wankel. And Felix Wankel, well, he was a weird guy. He was not somebody that you'd bring to Christmas. Why? Because he was the N-word, 4 letters, hard Z from Germany. And he definitely made it known that he was of that party his whole life up until they lost. And this is a thing. Some of this has been scrubbed. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just letting you know that he was. He actually was in jail because he was such an extremist that the only person to get him out of jail back in the day was the H-Man himself. So you can do whatever you want with that information. You don't have to tell anybody, and it can be our little secret. Now, what is a Wankel engine? It's actually an internal combustion engine that just uses a Dorito rotor to create a continuous rotational motion. There's a lot about a Rotary that makes it really interesting. And what makes it so interesting is that it's actually quite simple in how it produces power. The fact that it has a continuous rotational motion gives you a very interesting, not only RPM, but torque range and horsepower range. And it also comes out to be an incredibly balanced motor. Now, the Wankels were used in the R100, the RX2, the RX3, the RX4, the Loose, the RX7, and guess what, champ? The RX8. Don't call me champ in person, and I apologize for calling you champ. I hate it, and I hate the word butt. Wankels licensed the engine to various car manufacturers. This is all the way back in like the 60s and 70s, because back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of people actually believed that the Wankel engine was the future. It was a very easy to understand product that could be licensed, that was reliable and had a lot of power. And because it had history in aviation, a lot of people just thought it was the next innovation for IC. Daimler-Benz licensed it since 1961. They tried using it in a car called the Mercedes-Benz C111. GM actually licensed it in 1970, which is a whole different amount of history because Corvette and Chevy actually wanted to have a mid-engine Corvette for over 50 years, if you didn't know that. But they also wanted to have a Wankel-powered Chevy Corvette, and that was called the XP987 GT. But overall, a bunch of different car companies tried utilizing the Wankel. Why was it discontinued? Why did it start falling out? A lot of the reason was because of emissions. The number one reason that Mazda has suffered with the rotary engine and continues to suffer with it, not that anybody cares or wants to know, is because of emissions. Emissions have a really tough time with a car that from factory can shoot flames. Who knew? It's a shocker for us both. Now, what makes the RX8 unique? There's actually quite a bit. When the RX8 was released, when I would have been, I think, in high school at the time, I remember my friend of mine, his name was Justin. He had a white one, and he used to rev the ever-living piss out of it. And I just thought that was because he wore oversized Aeropostale hoodies and baggy jeans. But turns out, that's actually just what you're supposed to do, and Justin was way ahead of the time. Now, he smoked cigarettes at 17, so he wasn't necessarily the greatest influence on me, but we're not friends anymore. Now, with that said, it also has Freestyle doors, which is weird. It's not a 3-door coupe, though. Do not tell an RX-8 owner that they have a 3-door coupe. Do not call it a Hyundai either. They do not like that. The engine is super light. It's 100 pounds less than like a standard inline 4. One of the great things that makes the RX-8 so fantastic is its weight and its weight distribution. The car made 232 horsepower or 240 horsepower in the manual and 212 horsepower in the automatic. Why it made less than the automatic, there's a bunch of different reasons. My recommendation, if you're going to get an RX-8 though, only get a manual. Do not get an automatic. There's so many reasons for it, not just driving, but actually for reliability, for the ability to maintain it better. You need to have control on the clutch. It had a carbon fiber drive shaft. Everybody's gonna tell you if they have a carbon fiber drive shaft. Just like BMW people who tell you that they have carbon fiber drive shafts. Mazda RX-8 people, they'll tell you that they have them too. On top of that, tons of revs, no torque, makes the RX-8 fun to drive, but you're not necessarily going a billion miles an hour. Technically, the RX-8 was also better in fuel consumption, but it was still not enough. The Renesis, which is the name of the motor in the RX-8, won the International Engine of the Year award, even though it's not the greatest anymore. Back then, it was awesome. 1.3-liter rotary, 8,200 RPM rev range. You had a front mid-engine car. It was rear-wheel drive. It had 50-50 weight distribution, double wishbone front suspension. You got multi-link rear suspension. And my God, is it a fun car to drive. If you've never driven an RX-8, borrow a friend's, make sure they warm it up for you, and then go have fun with it. And you're gonna feel like you're driving something that just is different in a good way. A lot of people will ask, once they start learning about an RX-8 or maybe buying an RX-8, they're gonna hear the word port more times than Jack Sparrow. You're gonna hear port in every other sentence. For some reason, it's just a common word. Now, a port, in the term that we're talking about, me and you, ladies and gentlemen, while we're here, is that a port is the opening in the engine's housing that allows the air and fuel to enter and exit. It is a hole, all right? It is an orifice. You have ports, but we don't talk about them like that, right? Because that's inappropriate. You can think about these as ways that you can change a rotary. You can change the Renesis. You're gonna hear different versions of what you can do with these ports. Now you can widen them, you can create overlap, you can smooth them out, you can make them drop shaped, you can do a lot of different things. But think of rotary porting like swapping higher lift and longer cams into a piston engine. That's what you're kind of doing here. Not identical, but similar. A street port, if you've heard that before, is just nothing more than making the port larger, just increasing the overall diameter. And typically as you do that, you're gonna smooth things out while you do it. You're gonna also hear something called a bridge port. A bridge port is making another hole with a space in between, like a new intake port next to the main port. Now, something that's really interesting about when you start going into ports and things like that is it's a very, 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 very simple process that is almost scary, because at some points you're literally just cutting into a piece of metal using some sort of like cutout or template to make this thing a street port or a bridge port. Super weird experience doing the first time, but that's where you get some of the most angelic noises ever in the history of the world. Let's talk about myths versus facts. This is where we are going to spend the most time, because if we don't spend the most time here, you're gonna go off and tell all your friends that they blow up. They don't. What they do is their apex seals disintegrate. They fall apart. Like most people under pressure about to do a public speaking event, they just have a tendency to fall apart and get nervous. Complete engine rebuild is required when your apex seals disintegrate. And when they do fully go out, the inside of the housings will typically get damaged. which is what happens a lot of times, especially with the first owners of these cars, which is why RX-8s don't have the greatest rep. Now, a lot of people are gonna say that the apex seals are the biggest issue, and they are a big issue, but they're actually not the only big issue. A lot of issues with the RX-8 specifically is the side seals. The side seals experience a lot of pressure, and without the right lubrication and without the right cooling, and if you do something wrong with the engine and you don't prepare correctly, a lot of times those side seals can go out. Now, apex seals disintegrate, and I need you to follow along with me because you chose to learn about this. Apex seals disintegrate mostly because of a few reasons. The RX-8 has something called an OMP, or an oil metering pump, and that fails. The problem with it failing is that you don't ever really know that it fails until it just fails catastrophically. It's one of those things. It's like an IMS bearing in a 996 non-turbo. When it goes out, it goes out, and you'll know it. So what ends up happening is that people can get this fixed by doing a couple different things. Number one, we're gonna talk about it in the modification section, but you can actually get an external reservoir that can help feed oil to your motor while also not feeding it from your oil pan. Really what happens here, and what people will say, is that you can fix this with a proper premix. And you should never have apex seal issues. There's, for some reason, some controversy around if you need to premix your RX-8. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you plan on buying one, premixing is a very normal part of your life, and smelling like oil is too. The side seals and oil controller rings are the main points of failure here, so making sure that you've got a good premix is super important. And that goes into the other thing. Premix can definitely extend the life of your engine, contrary to popular belief. A Zone adapter kit, which is like an external oil tank, is how you fix this OMP thing. And what that does is it blocked off the oil pickup from the oil metering pump, so it doesn't pull oil from the engine oil pan. When you do that, you essentially bypass it, and it gets pulled in from a separate reservoir. What that allows you to do is you can actually change the type of oil that you're using for your engine versus the oil that you might be using for the other components of your car. By separating the two, you can actually swap to a heavier oil, which is good for the bearings in your Renesis. Why does this matter? Why am I talking in riddles? That's a great question. And that's because the RX-8 requires oil like we need air. It's not a want, it's a need. And the Zone adapter kit is by far one of the most beneficial and required things that you need to understand if you're gonna buy an RX-8. Now, I explained that very poorly, but if you go out and you wanna go buy one, it explains it impeccably. I'm not a Rotary enthusiast, but I know that Gels had one, and I watched him modify it the right way, and then I saw him drive it all the way down to Tennessee and back and not have an issue. And that made me realize maybe I'm the problem. Maybe we're the problem with our assumptions. Maybe, just maybe, the car's reliable. Which goes into another myth, that they aren't reliable. They are. They can be. To me, it's a lot like an air-cooled Porsche. These are just cars that require you to have a little bit more knowledge about them. And if you can do that, then you win. And if you don't want to do that, and you don't want to know, and you don't want to rush things, or you do want to rush things, the RX-8 is probably not going to be a good car for you. There are people that want unique things, and then there are people that are capable of owning unique things. And the RX-8 is a unique car that requires unique knowledge. And a lot of times, the people that talk the most crap about these things had one and didn't understand that concept. There are easy cars, there are medium cars, and there are hard cars to own. The RX-8 is not an easy car to own because it requires a little bit more knowledge, but that doesn't make it a bad car to own. Some things that you're gonna wanna do: a cat delete is absolutely necessary. Clogged cats can affect your engine and can blow it up. I just said how fantastic this car was, and now clogged cats can make it blow up. I don't make the rules, okay? Mazdas are weird, we love them, and they just have that weird thing going on with them. It's just how it goes. Now, the chassis code for this, fun fact, is actually FE, just like FD and FC before that, so that's kind of fun. Another myth is that they're not fun to drive. The RX-8 from an actual chassis design, man, is so cool. How they have that design from a rear-wheel drive layout with that engine sitting right in front of the firewall actually makes it a ton of fun. And they have a blast when you're turning in. When you turn in an RX-8, it feels like something incredible. They're super fun on track. When I was at VIR and I was at an SCCA event, one of every like 4 cars was an RX-8, and they were all green for some reason, or black, but they were fantastic, and people were having a treat with them. People don't drive them hard enough. That's true. They used to say, and still say, a red line a day keeps the rebuild away. Gels said that all the time because he had to, because he daily drove his RX-8 everywhere, and that, respect. I could never. You also have a gauge cluster in there that has some fun little tips and tricks in case you're curious. If brightness is all the way up, it's daylight, which is actually kind of interesting, but if you turn it down, there's actually a click and it'll go into a red nighttime mode. Kind of sick, kind of cool, kind of useless. So, what's the RX-8 buying guide for Marketplace? So I spent some time trying to figure this out because honestly, it's a show out there all the time, 24/7. Marketplace is like the wild, wild west, and I love it. 2009 and up is gonna be best. 2004 to 2008, you actually got a different 6-speed, which is fine, but for 2009 and up, you get a stronger 6-speed. It's actually made by Mazda. They are better, and if you're planning on tracking the car, my recommendation, save a couple more pennies so that you don't have to deal with transmission issues. Now, you can find deals with people having RX-8 issues selling them for cheap. Because a lot of times people will get a false reading that they think that the car needs an engine rebuild. This is why you'll see RX-8s going up for sale for $1,000, $1,500, $800, and sometimes you'll see them go up for $10,000. A lot of this is where you need to start to understand that you're buying something funky. You can get a false reading of a bad engine that a lot of times just needs coils, plugs, and wires. And because the car is sensitive to overheating, a lot of times compression testing is a requirement. If you're ever looking at a Marketplace ad and they don't mention the compression testing, don't buy it. Simple as that. The metering oil pump is a sensitive part. Remember, it delivers a small amount of crankcase oil to the intake to lubricate the apex seals and other components. If you don't have the replacement for that piece, or if you don't know that that's been replaced, don't buy it. Simple as that. Renesis moved the exhaust ports to the side housings. That can lead to carbon buildup issues. You're gonna wanna know if that engine has been refreshed, rebuilt, or if there's been any modifications to the actual ports themselves. What do they look like when they got rebuilt? And how long ago was it? Now, the rotor seals were redesigned. They're good on low-end performance, particularly as you get into the newer RX-8s, but they do degrade over time. Again, the big thing is keeping those gaskets fresh and healthy and lubed like us. How do you keep an RX-8 alive? If you own one, you should be in the comments helping these folks out. Please do that. If you're looking to buy one, listen to this part more than anything else. Number 1, compression tester. Number 2, a SON adapter. Number 3, an aluminum radiator. Number 4, a high flow water pump and fan control kit. Number 5, a BHR ignition kit. And number 6, an oil cooler upgrade kit. And you are set. If you keep it cool, you keep it lubed, you keep it primed, you're a happy man. Everybody's gonna love you. Your RX-8's gonna love you, and you are going to enjoy dating what might be considered the car version of an alternative boy or girl, which is good if that's what you want. Now, with that being said, it does require more support. Bonus points, make sure you get new coils, plugs, and wires in there if you want to. I would recommend it, just doing it if you don't have any history on when you buy the car. Wow, what are the common modifications? A lot of people will get an intake. You don't have to. There's actually no horsepower change. A lot of the joke... I think there's a cat here in my mouth. There's a running joke with the RX-8, and that is that every single mod you do to this thing adds 4 horsepower. Not more, not less, just 4. So, you're not gonna have a ton of horsepower. You can do anything you want to this thing. What makes it fun is driving it. People will still change the OEM intake to an aftermarket intake for the sounds and for the lulls, and it's awesome. AEM or InGen, again, mostly for sound. Bigger anti-roll bars is where you're gonna see the most change to the actual chassis and how it rolls through a turn. I recommend getting different sway bars and going with a nice coilover setup. You don't need to go super stiff because honestly, the car doesn't need to have a super stiff suspension setup. Headers and Andretti RX-8 exhaust is perfect. A lot of times with your cat that you're gonna take out, you can sell that for a pretty penny and then you can pay for the exhaust with what you made just on the cat itself. Wheels and tires, 18 by 9.5 plus 35, 235/40 tires, 10 coilovers of BC Racing, and you're set to go. I would consider, in my humble opinion, that the Mazda RX-8 is a bit like film photography. You don't go into something like film photography to be better, to be faster, to be more efficient. You do it because you love the art of photography. A Mazda RX-8 is like owning a car where you love the art of taking care of a car. And if you can accept that, the RX8 is a fun car, but it's like gardening. You have to keep up on it. You have to make sure that you're keeping an eye on things and that you're checking things and that you're understanding the little intricacies of what make the RX8 different. And if you can do that, you are going to own one of the most exciting and fun cars that I think you'll ever own in your entire life. And you will have so much fun trying to convince other people that the RX8 isn't as bad as what people lead on. But if you're not willing to do that, and you try to jump into film photography, and you try to be immediately the best, the clearest, the funnest, the most viral TikToker film photographer ever, and you just try to pummel your way through it, you're not gonna have a good time. Because the car isn't inherently that fantastic at anything. It's just properly fun. And the RX8 just feels good to drive. There's no other reason to own one than if you enjoy driving something that feels and acts differently than a normal car. And if you just want it to be a normal car, you have to know what are the biggest weaknesses with it. As long as you can do that, you're gonna love this thing. Now, with that being said, most of what I just shared with you, if you don't own an RX8 and you don't plan on owning one, is completely useless. But it was car knowledge, so sick. Let me know what car you want me to talk about next. I love this so much. I love doing these. Be sure to modify your car or your Mazda RX-8 over at martiniworks.com. I'm Alex. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one.